All right, here we go again. Welcome to the Otherppl Show, a weekly podcast featuring in-depth conversations with today's leading writers. It's a books and culture show. I'm Brad Listi. I'm in Los Angeles. This is my podcast. Welcome to it. Hope you're good out there wherever you happen to be. I appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button wherever you listen, and you can follow me on Bluesky and Instagram. I have a great episode for you today. It's a noir day on the Otherppl Show. Just in time for the holidays, I have Tod Goldberg, a returning champion, longtime friend of the show, back to discuss his latest book. It is another work of crime fiction. It's called Only Way Out, and it is available from Thomas and Mercer. It's a bit of a change-up for Tod in that it takes place in coastal Oregon rather than the desert Southwest, but it still features bad people doing bad things, desperate characters, people who wind up dead, thieves, maybe a couple of junkies. There's a fixer. You know what I mean. You're going to hear us get into all of it in just a bit. So otherwise, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Hope it wasn't too painful. Hope you didn't get flight delays and all that stuff if you traveled. Hope your family wasn't too chaotic. Hope your weird racist uncle, got shouted down at the dinner table. I went for a hike this morning, as I often do. First thing, it's like part of my routine. It's how I wake up. I get up early. I go climb a mountain with my dog, and I was doing that. And I also take a video, I take a video and some photos every morning when I'm hiking, and then I share that on social media in my Instagram stories and on Bluesky, just because I don't know what else to share. It seems nice. It seems inoffensive. It's something I can do every day. It's just some pictures. People like pictures. And I take a video of my feet as I'm walking, not in a gratuitous way. It's not that. It's just like me walking on the trail, and I kind of point my phone down, and then you can kind of see me walking, and then you can see my dog. It's really about the dog because people, they like to see your dog walking in nature. So I did that this morning, and I was hiking, and I got up, not to the top, not to the summit, but to a vista, to a natural, panoramic sort of location where I felt like it would be a good idea to take a photo. So I pull out my phone, and I'm kind of looking to see where I'm going to point the camera. And as I do this, I look down and I realize that I'm 2 feet from a cliff's edge. And when I say cliff, I got to give you, some numbers. I don't feel like I would have died had I fallen, but I could have broken my neck. It was probably about 20 feet, a 20-foot drop. I think I could have survived it. I can't remember this ever happening to me when I was hiking. I usually have pretty good spatial awareness. I'm not interested in falling from heights. I think I just didn't realize how precipitous the drop was. I just wasn't clued in. And then I was kind of looking through my phone. Maybe I was a little tired. It was early, and I just didn't clock it until I did. And thank goodness I did when I did. But I didn't fall. And interestingly, I had my dog leashed, tethered to me. So she would have gone over too. I think she would have been fine. Right? She would have figured out. Animals, four-legged animals have a better chance. But, had I fallen, I would have done so not knowing it was coming, right? It would have come at a complete surprise to me. So I think it would have been ugly. I wouldn't have had much time to really brace myself So I'm glad that didn't happen. I wouldn't be talking to you right now had I ate it. And then on the way down, I'm walking down this trail. I've walked it 1,000,000 times, and I see off to my right what looks like another trail that I've never walked on and that I really truly hadn't seen in all of these years that I've lived in Los Angeles and have been hiking these trails. And I thought to myself, how did I miss this? How have I been walking past this trail all these years and not seen that it was a trail? And so I was I think it's a trail. I don't see other people taking this route, but I'm going to try it. because I'm a completist and I want to walk every trail in this park. So I start going down, and about halfway down, I realize that it's probably not like a real trail, or maybe it used to be a trail and then sort of fallen into disrepair. There was a section where I had to scoot. Like I actually sat down and kind of scooted down because it was steep, and it really wasn't a trail. I don't know what I was doing. But I get down to the bottom, which felt nice, and I was like, okay, well, I made it. I at least had that experience. And then I realized that there is all of this fencing at the bottom of the trail. It's sort of like that construction fencing. It's fluorescent orange and sort of boxed in with my dog. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to get over this thing. And so I kind of swung my leg over, managed to get over, and then I'm calling Twiggy, and I'm like trying to get her to jump over it, which I think she could have done if she would have given it her all, but she wasn't going to do that. She was sort of freaked out. I don't think she liked the fence. She didn't like that I was on one side and she was on the other. So she starts like sprinting back and forth, like trying to find a way through, and she couldn't. And so she was getting frustrated. And then she started barking. And then I looked over and I saw some people looking at me. Like, what is this guy doing? Like coming down this trail that's not a trail. And then he's going over this fence, which is clearly there for a reason. And his dog is freaking out. So I'm calling my dog. And eventually what happened was I lifted up the fence and she went under it instead of going over it, which would have been, I think, more cinematic. And then I went home. I mean, that's my life right there. I do that in the morning. I work all day. I eat stuff. I go to sleep. I hang out with my kids. I mean, that's it. But I did on the way home stop to get gas. And I was thinking about robots for some reason. I think I'm not a lazy person. I don't know why this was bothering me, but I just didn't feel like getting out of my car to get gas. Oh, I know what it was. I was listening to something. I was listening to a podcast, and I was kind of in the middle of it, and it was hooked up to my car speakers on Bluetooth. And then I was like, oh, I got to get out, and then I'm going to lose the Bluetooth, and I've got to, what do I do? Like, do I have my phone in my hand, and then I'm broadcasting it, and then everybody at the gas station can hear it? Not that it was controversial, but I'm just like, I don't want to be that guy holding his phone, listening to a podcast. I guess I could have put my earbuds in, but that added a layer. I was just feeling annoyed, and I thought to myself, I'd like to just sit in my car. I've got the seat warmers on, and I could just sit here. It'd be nice to have a robot, like do the work, and fill my car up with gasoline. Seems like we should already have that. They probably do already have that in like South Korea or something, right? These countries that tend to be like way more technologically advanced than we are. And they're always kind of ahead of the curve on like phone technology and just technology in general. Finland. But it made me think, like, when I was a kid, I want to say full service. There was a gas station in my little town in suburban Milwaukee. And I remember my mom would pull up and there would just be a guy there who would fill your car up. And it wasn't like some highfalutin thing. You didn't have to pay extra. That's just how it was. It was a kinder, gentler America. Something so civil about it. The filling station, I think, was like, that was how my mom called it. I don't know if that's like a baby boomer thing or if, she's from the South. Maybe that's a Southern thing. But we would go to the filling station. There'd be a guy there and he would fill up your car, and then you would like pay him, like you'd hand him cash through the window, or he'd have one of those credit card, machines, not even a machine. You put the card in it and then you run the thing over the card and it makes a carbon copy of it. You've got to be old to remember this probably, but I remember it. That was how you got gas back in the 1980s. And, I keep seeing on the internet these videos of these trade shows where these like robotics perverts are making like fake women. Is anybody else getting this? And by the way, why am I getting it? It's It's a little twisted and scary, but essentially, if you're not aware, there are people out there who are actively racing to make like super hot, super lifelike robot women so that like super lonely incels can pretend to have hot girlfriends or whatever. And you watch these videos and there's these guys at trade shows interacting with these incredibly like kind of creepily lifelike supermodels, but only the face is lifelike. The rest is like pure robot. You can see the innards, essentially, the metal and the wires and whatever else. But then the face might as well be a person, but it kind of looks like an AI beauty. It's like that kind of like it's super real. And yet it's kind of just a little bit fake and unsettling. And so I keep saying that. And I'm like, well, they're going to do this, right? They're going to have somebody out there, like multiple somebodies out there manufacturing fake people. And yet we can't get somebody to make a robot that just like fills your car up with gas so that you can sit in your car and listen to a podcast in peace. And I say this as somebody who's kind of anti-robot. I don't want, I get that robots are going to have their utility, especially for people with disabilities or, there's certain things that I think a robot is going to be able to do that are going to be positive. But I don't know if I want robots like out in society walking around. That doesn't seem good to me. And I feel like they're going to turn on us. They are going to turn on us. AI, robots, this can only go badly. That's how I feel about it. I've seen the movies. I've read the sci-fi. It's going to get fucked up eventually. It's going to be bad people doing bad things. That's what's going to happen. But I want a gas station where I don't have to get out of my car. That's what I want. Somebody should do that. I think that's a good business. I think most people don't want to get out of their car, especially if there's inclement weather or it's super cold. But I just think people want to be on their phones and they want to get their car gassed up and then they want to be gone. So I have a weekly email newsletter you can subscribe to over at bradlisti.substack.com. I'll let you know about the latest episodes of this show. I also share a list of links to things that I've been reading and finding interesting. And I want to let you know about DeepDive. It's a company of mine. I founded it earlier this year. DeepDive is an education platform, and it creates in-depth courses for people with curious minds. The first 3 courses that DeepDive has produced are all writing related. I am the host of each of these courses, and they are How to Write a Novel, which is the flagship course. It's more than 50 hours long with nearly 4 dozen instructors / contemporary authors. So people like Emily St. John Mandel, Melissa Broder, Stephen Graham Jones, Steve Almond, etc. Like an all-star lineup of teachers, more than 50 hours. And then there are 2 shorter form courses, one of which is called How to Get the Reader on Board. That is taught by Steve Almond. And then the third course is called How to Write Autobiographical Fiction. It is taught by Hannah Pittard. And it also features Michael Wheaton, the founder of Autofocus Books. Today's episode, this conversation with Tod Goldberg, goes live on November 30th, Sunday, November 30th. If you're listening in real time or on the day of this episode going out into the world, you should know that DeepDive's biggest sale of the year, the Cyber Monday sale, is happening on Monday, December 1st and Tuesday, December 2nd. So it's actually a 2-day sale. It's the biggest blowout of the year. Everything, all courses, all bundles are available for 50% off, 50, half off everything for 2 days. So how do you get 50% off? You enter the coupon code CYBER2025 at checkout. And I should emphasize that deep dive courses are the perfect gift for yourself or for the writer in your life. So if you know somebody who is an aspiring writer or somebody who's working on a book and could use a little bit of continuing education or mental or spiritual support, these courses are ideal. And you can send a deep dive course as a gift on the day and time of your choosing. So it'll be delivered to the recipient's inbox on the day and time you choose. All you have to do is just select send as a gift when you're at checkout, and you'll see the option to select the day and time. It's very easy. It's the perfect gift for a writer. Everything is half off on December 1st and December 2nd. Just use the offer code CYBER2025. The website is www.deepdive.audio. All right, so my guest today is Tod Goldberg. His latest novel is called Only Way Out, available now from Thomas and Mercer. Tod is the New York Times best-selling author of 16 novels, including the Gangsterland Quartet. By the way, it is a quartet. And the quartet includes Gangsterland, which was a finalist for the Hammett Prize, Gangster Nation, Below Desert, which was a Southwest Book of the Year, and then Gangsters Don't Die, an Amazon Best Book of 2023 and a Southwest Book of the Year. So there are other books. You can read his full bio in the show notes, but a prolific and very accomplished writer of crime fiction, Tod is also a professor of creative writing at the University of California, Riverside, where he founded and continues to direct the low residency MFA program in creative writing and writing for the performing arts. Very fun, as always, to talk with Tod Goldberg, and I hope you enjoy the dialogue. All right, here we go. This is Tod Goldberg, and his new novel, once again, is called Only Way Out.
The good people at Thomas and Mercer had asked me if I would submit a short story. That they do all these really cool short story anthologies of crime that they put out, like 6 stories over the course of 6 months. And so I was looking for an idea, and I didn't have any ideas, but of course I'd already agreed to write it because I was like, yeah, of course something will come to me. And it was getting to the point, Brad, frankly, where I thought, I'm going to have to tell them I can't write this. And I had gone to a concert with my sister. And this is an important thing for the listeners. Take your sisters to concerts.
What concert?
We went and saw Jason Isbell. It's an important thing that we do as a family. I take my sister to see Jason Isbell in concert. Because you get to see them as they were when you guys were all kids and screaming. You don't often get to see your siblings who are parents and have taxes screaming. It's a good reminder of your youthful days watching the Monkees. Anyway, I had woken up the next morning. I was staying at my sister's house in Thousand Oaks, and my nephew at the time was in law school, and he had summer associated at a couple different places. And I was like, anything unusual about any places you've been? I was just making conversation. The coffee hadn't kicked in yet, and he's like, no, it's like 105-year-old firm, so it's like a lot of blue blood stuff. I was like, yeah. He said, well, the one weird thing is there's an entire floor of safe deposit boxes. And I was like, what? He said, yeah, there's an entire floor of safe deposit boxes that are covered by attorney-client privilege. You're seeing this more and more because the feds can't get into them. And when I tell you, Brad, that was the moment I realized you don't always need coffee to wake up.
Yeah.
That you can just see dollar signs falling in front of your eyes. And I said, who's in charge of these boxes? And he said, oh, Jeff. I was like, Jeff is in charge of these boxes. I was like, what's Jeff's story? He's like, well, I don't think he's a lawyer, but he's been working there a while. And he's the one that does inventory on all the boxes and checks to make sure that, they're not putting anything illegal in. And I said, so hold on a minute. If I were to say, walk in there and say, I want to keep my stuffed Snoopy in there, would it be legal for Jeff or my lawyer to unzip the Snoopy and see what's inside of it? And he said, no. And I was like, you just made me $1 million.
So, and just to be clear too, you say this is increasingly common. So it's not just like this law firm has this special service.
No, it's increasingly common because you might remember this because you're in LA. I don't know if listeners around the world will know the story, but there was a private safe deposit box company that was in Beverly Hills that the FBI raided. And they opened up every single box in this private storage facility, because the assumption under the law essentially was that if you're keeping stuff there, you're doing illegal things. And they were looking for cartel money. So the cartels often use, and also street gangs use them, will use these private safe deposit box companies as essentially a drop. So you go in there and you put a bag inside the safe deposit box filled with cocaine. Someone else has the key. They come in with the key and they take the bag out and close the box back up. And so all these drug dealers and criminals were moving guns and drugs and money through this private safe deposit box company. But it became a big deal because people that weren't actually doing illegal things got caught up in it and had all their stuff seized because of the presumption that if you're doing business there, it is illegal. And so it went all the way to the Supreme Court. But feds can get into your box at a bank. Feds can get into your private security boxes, but they can't get into them at a law firm because it's covered under attorney-client privilege.
Fascinating. And so I always think about this because I don't have a safety deposit box. I have no reason to have, or is it a safe deposit box?
Safe deposit box.
I'm like, there must be different sizes. Like if you're putting $5 million in cash in a safe deposit box, there must be a big box.
Well, $5,000 or $5 million actually isn't that much space. I want to say like $1 million is like 2 pounds or something like that. It's not a lot. It doesn't weigh a lot. And if it's all $100 bills, it doesn't take up that much space to make $1 million.
Right.
But yeah, they're of all different sizes. And there's a lot of these law firms that offer safe deposit boxes in places like Gibraltar, which is a big money laundering hub. And so these American law firms will have offices in Gibraltar, where their clients are often doing business.
In quotes.
In quotes. So, like, I learned about all of this, and I was like, well, my crime brain was just lit up, obviously. And then I was like, well, if I'm Jeff, what's stopping me from heisting all of these things? And, of course, typically it's a strong moral code and a lack of desire to go to prison. Those aren't things that I worry about too much on a sort of a minute-to-minute basis. I met someone the other day, by the way, and I was like, you seem like the kind of guy who's got a code. And he's like, my code changes every day depending upon what I think of the person. And I was like, oh, that's scary and dark and makes you a serial killer. But anyway, so all these firms have these things, and so that turned on my brain. And so I pitched an idea of a guy heists a bunch of safe deposit boxes, and then I'm always looking to see, like, how can I twist this to my true desires? And my true desires are always like crooks that fail. And so I wanted two things to happen. I wanted someone to be framed for a murder they wanted to commit, and I wanted someone to get away with a heist only to lose it all in a bizarre, tragic way to someone who also needed to heist something. So I had this problem set up in my head sort of for years of something I wanted to do, and then the story showed up for me. And so the short story that I pitched to Thomas and Mercer was, this guy heists these safe deposit boxes and crashes his van down a mountain pass in front of a crooked cop who's got his own debts. And I was like, then I'll figure out what happens. Like, I could do that in 40 pages. And they were like, that sounds great. We'd like a novel. And, that's a champagne problem. And I was like, yes, I could totally write that as a novel. I didn't have any idea what I was going to write about. And so I had to take a fair amount of time to sort of figure out what it actually is that I was trying to say and what I wanted to look at with all of this. And the reality is that I've always been fascinated by the lore that shows up around criminals. And, in all the gangster books I wrote, it was really, the dark secret that you probably know. So those books were all satire. I'm making fun of the mafia. I'm making fun of the culture of, the gangsterification of the culture, but also that Las Vegas in those books is a city built on crime that's going to rip you off the moment you land in the city, and you're fine with it and celebrates it. And so, like, I had done sort of like our obsession with crime on a large scale. And now I want to do it on like a DB Cooper scale.
Who's DB Cooper?
You don't know who DB Cooper is?
Well, is this the guy that jumped out of the plane?
Yeah. So DB Cooper hijacked an empty plane in 1972 or something like that. Got onto an empty plane. Or they let the people off. Jesus Christ, I don't know my own stories. He hijacked a plane. They landed. They took all the people off. They left him on. He asked for a bunch of cash and a parachute. And he jumped off the plane with the parachute and then all the money and disappeared. And so in my mind, I've always been fascinated by that story of DB Cooper. And my thought was like, what would happen if DB Cooper happened sort of around today and in a small town on the Oregon coast, a dying resort town? How would they commodify that to make DB Cooper into the driver of their industry? And so that's what I did.
Okay. So just to kind of put a finer point on the setup, you have this guy, Robert Greene, who is the Jeff. He's the guy who has access to the safe deposit boxes at this like white shoe law firm.
Correct.
And he gets this idea in his head that he's going to steal the boxes and take off and then extort the clients.
Correct.
For cash. Because he's got all of their sensitive materials and documents and criminal evidence or whatever it is.
Right.
And he hopes to take off to South America with his sister, Penny. And can you just describe Penny for listeners? Because I find her to maybe be the heart of the book.
Yeah, she's a child prodigy. She's one of those people with a 216 IQ who goes to MIT at 15. And you see the article, you're sitting in the dentist's office and you're reading a People magazine from 12 years ago that's still sitting there. And you're like, oh, that kid's fucked. Like that kid's, they're going to destroy that child. Like she's going to be in a terrible position. And so she's a child prodigy who, once she leaves the small town of Granite Shores and goes out into the real world, realizes that she hates other smart people, that her people are not these geniuses, that she doesn't belong in the same class with them, essentially. And she starts doing sort of petty crimes and then gets herself involved in some larger crimes with international syndicates and the like. But she's really... in my mind, she's, she wishes she had become Liz Phair, essentially, and is upset with the choices that were made for her as a young person. I don't think any 15-year-old wants to go to college early. I don't think any 15-year-old wants to go to grad school early. Like those are decisions that your parents make for you. No matter how smart you are, you're not socialized enough to go to college when you're that age. And so she's lived her entire life under a microscope of being, the smartest person at age 15 ever to get into MIT. And so her entire life, she's been followed around by journalists and reality shows and Dateline and Dr. Phil and things like that. But she's really, sort of closer to a criminal than she is a savant.
Okay. So you've got Penny as the sister of Robert Greene.
Right.
And Robert absconds with all of these safe deposit boxes in his van. And then I don't think I'm spoiling too much because this is sort of the opening of the novel, is that he takes off, but then his van spins off the road at a mountain pass in Oregon and he is decapitated.
As happens.
And then his, the accident and the site of the accident, the van and his body, or what is left of his body, are discovered by Jack Biddle, who is your corrupt cop. He's like the sheriff of Granite Shores.
Correct.
And he's got his own criminality and his own hustle going. And he stumbles upon this headless body, this wrecked van. What's the name of the gulch again? Or it's like the
Patterson Gulch.
Yeah, Patterson Gulch. I'm assuming these are all fiction. Granite Shores is fictional, right?
Yeah, it's all fictional. We made it
okay.
All.
So yeah, but it's like this place that most people wouldn't ever be able to find. It's like a convenient place for this van to have crashed because it's the kind of thing that can just sort of rot there and nobody will be the wiser.
It's sort of a takeoff on Donner Pass. Like there's a fake mythology of a kid who ate his entire family and the dogs, and the mountain's named for him.
Right. And so Sheriff Jack finds this gold mine essentially.
Right.
And he takes off with it. And then he also has this head, Robert's body. He's got to deal with the body. I don't know if I want to get into exactly how he deals with it, but let's just say he deals with it. And so then this mythology sort of swells. Like you talked about how lore tends to accompany stories of true crime.
Right.
It was this what happened to Robert kind of thing that the locals in Granite Shores glom onto. And it even becomes, I think, part of the trade of the town. It becomes a kind of currency, because this guy has committed this spectacular crime. People think he's still on the lam. He just vanished as far as they are concerned.
Right.
When in fact, it's the sheriff who's got all the shit and is continuing this sort of hustle.
Yeah. The sheriff is still blackmailing people, pretending that Robert Greene is alive.
Right.
Which is dark, I recognize.
So then that's like one, I think that's like one, if we're going to like use this image of it's like a three-legged stool or something. Like it's the Jack Biddle, Robert Greene part of it. And then you have Penny, who returns to Granite Shores and her brother's missing. And, time has passed. And, since her child prodigy days, how old is she at the time?
I think she's 40 when she comes back. So she ends up getting arrested for the heist because she was a partner to Robert in it, though she wasn't there. And so she goes to prison for over a decade. And after a while, an ex-con fixer comes to her with a solution of, I think we can find the money or we can find your brother. I'm the only person that can help you. You're the only person that can help me. Sort of a classic noir setup of, bad people helping other bad people for nefarious ends.
This is Mitch Diamond.
Mitch Diamond, yes.
Okay, so I got to say, one thing that occurred to me, and I don't know if it occurred to you, is that the relationship between Mitch and Penny is maybe my favorite part of the book, like that interplay. Mm-hmm. It reminded me on some level of the relationship between Lisbeth Salander and Mikhail Blomkvist or whatever, however you pronounce it.
Oh, and Girl in the Dragon Tattoo?
There's a little bit of that because Penny's kind of goth. Yeah. Penny's got this aesthetic that kind of just reminded me of Lisbeth. And they're also like super brilliant.
Right.
Both of these. So very compelling. I love that kind of character where they're like edgy, outsider-ish, angry, disaffected, goth, and a genius.
And super competent.
Yeah.
There was something that our mutual friend Mark Haskell Smith once told me about my own work, which I was like, oh, I guess that's true. He said, you have a tendency to write about people who think they're competent running into people who actually are competent. And what happens then? And I thought about that a lot when I was writing this book because the crooked cop, Jack Biddle, is just this wildly vainglorious guy who thinks, that they're going to rename a mountain for him and streets are going to get named for him and maybe he'll be a congressman and then the president. He's just a dope. He's just a malevolent dope and who thinks he's got the drop on every single person and is so dumb he can't see that every single person has the drop on him. And I love to write characters like that. And I love, in this case, to have a character like Penny, who is unlike a lot of characters in my books in that you don't feel like she's going to hurt somebody or has the capacity to hurt somebody in every scene. I leave that to some other characters because she's just gotten out of prison and she doesn't want to go back. So the last thing she wants to do is punch someone in the face and end up going back to jail. And so the way that she's going to inflict damage on people is often verbally, but also just somehow trying to figure out how she's going to win in the end. And that's a different kind of writing for me. I think a lot of what I've done over my career, the success has been that in any given scene, you think someone might get shot in the face. And I don't think that's the same here because of course it's a different kind of book than what I've written in the last, 12 years of my life or 15 years of my life.
I was rooting for her.
I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, that's who I was invested in and wanted to see win.
Yeah. She's my favorite. I loved writing her because she's smart and she's weird. And, anyone that starts a conversation, there's a part early in the book where she just sort of drops into a conversation by asking if someone believes in aliens. And I was like, that's the kind of person I like to encounter.
We sort of follow her and we follow Mitch as they're trying to figure out what happened to Robert, and I don't know if they're in pursuit of Sheriff Jack, but it's like, you can feel this collision coming, as you often do in great crime stories. And so I want to pause there and say that there are two things that I think distinguish this book from previous efforts of yours. And one is that it's set in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about that first, because you're known for being like the guy who writes desert noir.
Right.
Your books about the hitman rabbi are in Vegas. The low desert is all set in Palm Desert, that area. This book is it's kind of the opposite, rainy Oregon, the lush coast of Oregon. And I'm curious to know about that decision, and then about maybe some of the challenges it presented, because that's not your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Did you take a trip up there? I guess you're from Northern California, so you sort of get the vibe, but talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm fascinated by dying resort towns. I mean, I live in the Coachella Valley, which when I was a kid, Palm Springs was, sort of a dilapidated dying resort town. And so I moved here when I was in 8th grade. And we had lived in Northern California before. And before my parents got divorced, we had a beach house in Capitola, which is a dying coastal resort town. And then throughout, my childhood, my mom would always date guys who owned limousine companies, and they'd have a beach house at Pismo, which, if you're not familiar, Pismo's
I've been to
imagine
Pismo.
Santa Cruz, but less. So in my childhood, I spent a lot of time in places with diagonal parking and saltwater taffy and art on balsa wood. we did a lot of weekends of that. And coming to Palm Springs was sort of that too, as sort of a tourist trappy town. And then every summer when I was a kid, we would go up to Loon Lake, Washington, which is 26 miles outside of Spokane. And we would stay at Granite Point Park, which is a crappy little fishing resort at this crappy little lake in eastern Washington.
Wait, why though? Was there a family connection?
Yeah, so all of our family, my grandparents and everything, were all in Walla Walla. And then the people that had settled out of Walla Walla had settled into Seattle, and then my mom and all of us were in Northern California. So, sort of a triangle around the region. But my family had been going up to Loon Lake since the 1930s. That was tradition. We all went up there and fished for 3 weeks. And if you look at my books, if you look at my brother's books, in every single one of our books, there is some allusion to Walla Walla or Loon Lake, Washington. Every single one of them. And at this point, it's a little subconscious, it just sort of shows up. But then it's also I like to put Easter eggs in for people that are paying attention. So I spent a lot of time growing up in these weird sort of dying resort towns that always seemed a little insidious to me. Living in Palm Springs and working at resorts as a kid, as a teenager, I was just part of a criminal ring at a hotel. We just stole shit. We robbed your rooms. We broke into your cars. It was a criminal ring that ran the cabana stands at every resort in Palm Springs from 1985 until 1989 that I was a part of. And so I've always been aware that there's this darkness. And of course, I'm sure you know this. Anytime you go on vacation, the people that are working there, wherever you're on vacation, they want you to die. They want you just, could that person please have a heart attack and not stay in this room?
That's always my suspicion. This is why I don't love going to resorts and hotels and restaurants even. I feel
yeah, they hate you. You're at their job, and they hate their job. And so by extension, they hate you. If you're wondering is someone putting their nuts in my drink? Yeah, someone is. 100% someone is. The notion of hospitality is for the companies. For the workers, it's how do I get out of these 8 hours without killing somebody? So that's always existed in my knowledge base as a human and having lived in these places. And so I really wanted to set this story in a place like that, one of those places, a dying place that this crime could revitalize. And so I had thought about maybe doing it in a fictional town in the desert, but I liked the idea of there being a boardwalk and pronto pups and boats, and the only place I could put a boat in the desert is the Salton Sea, and there's not a great exit plan from that. Landlocked seas aren't a great way to get out of town. So I was talking to my brother, and I was like, well, maybe I'll just change my idea and have him crash somewhere in the desert, like in the high desert or something. And my brother said, why don't you do something different? I was like, yeah, I could just do something different. He's like, you should do something different. And so I started thinking of all these places, and I sort of combined them into one mythical town that I had in fact used a little bit before in some short stories over the years about a different character. And so I was like, oh, I've used this before. I can change it for this book. And I was going to go up and spend time up in Seaside, where I had spent a lot of time as a kid. Also, Seaside is a resort town in Washington, or Oregon, rather. Seaside and Gearhart. But then, unfortunately, my lovely wife had gotten sick. She'd gotten cancer last year. And so I didn't go. But what the advantage of not going was, and she's fine, by the way, listeners, she's fine.
That's good to hear.
The advantage of not going was I didn't feel like I had to adhere to anything that I had seen. And that I could make things up to suit my own purposes, and I wasn't too influenced by that place. In a way, Brad, I'm sort of a Faulkner-like writer, I think, in this regard, sort of creating my own towns. I think when I'm getting the Nobel, this is something that we'll probably talk more about, my relationship to Faulkner. So it was a conscious choice. And I've also always sort of come from the position that setting begets character. And so to write about the smartest person to come from a dying resort town seemed fun to me. Or to talk about, the chief of police of a shitty resort town, that seemed fun to me. And then I could play with some of my passions, like, arcane Lost Boys trivia, things like that.
Yeah, it's funny. I was reading your book, and I was thinking of like the Goonies, like that Astoria, I think is where it's set. Like,
I spent a lot of time in Astoria as a kid.
Yeah. So that was like my visual in my brain as I was reading. And then also First Blood, the Rambo movie.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
100%.
It's kind of great. I mean, it's got a great sort of noirish look to it.
Did you ever read the book that First Blood is based on, David Morrell's book, First Blood? An amazing, awesome thriller from 1979 or whatever. David Morrell, fantastic thriller writer. I don't think he thought that he was going to have, a never-ending franchise from the movies. I'm sure he's very, very happy about it. But a wonderful, wonderful book. I read that before I saw the movie even.
Oh, wow.
And loved it.
Yeah, it's funny. We're the same generation. Like, those movies were huge for me as a kid. Like the Stallone universe. Yes.
Or Chuck Norris, Uncommon Valor. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get Randall Tex Cobb, who's a boxer, 9 guys who look like him, and we're going to see if there are, in fact, still people being held in Vietnamese prisons.
Yes. That was First Blood Part 2, I think, right?
Well, that's First Blood Part 2 and also Uncommon Valor.
Yeah. So anyway, that's I think the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about in terms of like the shifts in your work and the new challenges that you took on. Second thing, and it's just sort of a businessy thing, is that I think this is your first book with Thomas and Mercer, right? You were a Counterpoint guy for a long time.
And I will remain a Counterpoint person. So my next book's going to be with Counterpoint. And it's a different kind of book. I think the books I've written for Counterpoint have all been, and this has been wonderful, real huge critical successes and been commercial successes as well. And I wanted to write something. I'd spent 15 years of my life writing those gangster books. I wrote the first one. It came out in 2014, but I wrote it starting in 2011. And so I spent from 2011 until 2024, so 13 years, working on these gangster books, plus working on a TV adaptation of it. So I spent a good part of my life just writing these same characters for a really long time, and it's been great. It was fantastic. It was lucrative and important to me, and I think, what I will probably be known for the rest of my career, which is awesome. It's good to know that. Better than the Burn Notice tie-ins.
Which are excellent, by the way.
Which are excellent. And so I wanted to do something that was fun and a little different and maybe even a bit more commercial than what I had done in the past. And when Thomas and Mercer came to me with the offer, it was a real opportunity to hit a different audience. They simply reach a huge audience. And I'm seeing that already. The book isn't out yet, and it's already, in like the top 50. And so, they are a machine.
Wait. I don't understand. I don't know as much as I should about Thomas and Mercer. Is that an Amazon imprint?
Yeah. So it's one of the Amazon imprints.
And so they can use that infrastructure to kind of like market their own titles, right?
Yes, which they do. So yesterday at some point I looked and I was number 58, to which I thought, of all the books that are on here, all 30 million books are on Amazon. Today I am 58. They just have the ability to get those books directly into the hands of the people that are going to buy them. They know exactly who buys your books, And so I knew when I was writing this book, I wanted it to be a bit more commercial. I wanted it to be, not so gloomy as some of the gangster books can be, maybe a little less violent. I wanted to write something funnier. And then, this was my thought process then. But then, as I mentioned before, I started to write the book and my wife got sick. And I ended up writing a lot of this book sitting in waiting rooms, while she was getting chemotherapy or while she was getting radiation or going to a doctor's appointment. And, I was filled with fear and anxiety and sadness and worry and, all those things that we all feel when the person that we love is sick. And I would sit there in those rooms with my laptop and my, earbuds on, trying not to freak out, seeing all the people around us that were sick. And I was like, how am I ever going to write this? This doesn't make any sense. And in every single waiting room that we went to, there was a rack of books. Every single waiting room had a rack of books. And I was like, right. I am in that business. I'm in the business of when you are sick and you are waiting and you want to disappear into a different life, you can go to that shelf, you can pick that book up, you can open it up. And even if you only read 15 pages in that waiting room, for the 15 minutes you read those pages, you've left everything behind for those 15 minutes if you do it well. And that inspired me to really be like, you know what? I'm feeling all these things. I'm going to write the opposite of these things. I'm going to write something fast and funny and weird and dark. And there's no lack of emotion in it too, but I wanted to do a different kind of book than what I would do with Counterpoint. Because I think what I do for Counterpoint tends to have sort of a larger literary bent to it. So the next book I'm doing is about organized crime at the Salton Sea in the 1960s. I'm doing that for Counterpoint. And that may be one book. It may be 3 books. I don't know yet. But I think I'll probably, always go back and forth a little bit, provided the book remains a success, because I enjoy doing both kinds of books.
Yeah, I mean, number 58, that's on the strength of pre-orders. That's not even, the book isn't even out, right?
Correct, yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah, it's good, yeah.
And I read, too, I think when I was prepping, that you had a copy of Swag by Elmore Leonard as sort of like a totem, something that I think you used as maybe a North Star, just like a source of continuing inspiration as you were writing this new one.
Yeah, and, Swag's there's aspects of it that do not hold up, I assure you, because it's a Elmore Leonard novel in the 1970s. In Detroit. So there's some language that will surprise you. But it's sort of a perfect crime novel. It's 2 bad guys who just start, doing, heists and robberies and stuff and get on the wrong side of someone else and they have to figure their way out of it. Like, no one is a good guy in these books, but you end up really feeling empathetic towards at least one of the main characters. And that's always the challenge I give myself is, okay, I want to write about sort of these beautiful losers. How do I make them in such a way that you, when you're reading them, are like, I wouldn't want to be married to this guy, but I might not mind being friends with that guy. I might enjoy meeting him for a drink or two. And so Swag and really, that book, then sort of all of Donald Westlake, those books were my guiding principle. Like, don't get too verbose, don't get too literary. Remember what you're writing. And also, like, when you're stuck, it's a great place to be like, oh, I don't want to do this. Oh, here's a great book. I can sit and read.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was reading the book and I was kind of marveling at the language and just like the way that really skilled writers of true crime tend to be excellent at writing in like a style that I would call like hard-boiled, but it's probably not the right word. There's a cutting humor. You're a very funny guy. There's a lot of funny in all of your books, but it's a certain kind of very dark, sort of like ink black humor.
Yeah.
And like one of the things that I notice about it, and I think this probably, could be said across the genre, across the space, is that you have to have a kind of casualness almost. It's not that the violence is without consequence on the page, but you can sense in the author, like there's a little bit of fun.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that the thing that sort of prepped America again for this kind of storytelling was Pulp Fiction. Like prior to Pulp Fiction coming out, novels like that are like that, and you can draw a line from Pulp Fiction to this book. It's not a hard place to figure it out.
Well, Tarantino is like a hardcore Elmore Leonard fan.
Yeah, huge Elmore Leonard fan. But like that got viewers used to what has always been part of noir, which is black comic timing, sort of a cynical view of life and a cynical view of death. And because it's noir, even the worst things that are happening at sort of sardonic remove. And I think that's always what I have done in most of my work. I've done that, I think, because it's how I view life. I mean, I think I told the story on your show once before, like when my mom died. Did I tell the story on your show?
Possibly.
When my mom died and a priest came in to say a prayer for her. Did I tell the story? So it's a quick story, I promise. So my mom, this is like 15 years ago. My mom had cancer and was dying. She was in her 70s and she fell at her assisted living facility and they took her to the closest hospital, which was a Lutheran hospital in Ventura. And so all of us kids drive out there and we're Jews. This is the important part of the story. And we're all sitting around my mom and she dies. So it's very sad. My mom dies and we're all just sort of like, well, we think she's dead. So two weird things happen. Like, is she dead? Like, we don't know if she's dead. And so a nurse walks by and we're like, excuse us, we don't know if our mom is dead. And she's like, hold on, there's someone dying in the next room. And we're like, okay, all right. And so we're sitting there. I remember my lovely wife, Wendy, was sitting there and she's like, I think her fingers are turning blue. I think that means she's dead. And I was like, they couldn't turn blue already. And there's like me and also my brother, who's also a crime writer. We're all sort of like looking at her body. It's like, it's dark and fucking weird. And, we're clearly in shock, I'm sure. And then the nurse comes back in and she's like, yes, your mother is dead. We say, okay. And she says, would you like the priest to come up and say some words? And we're like, and my sister Karen, who's sort of the more spiritual one of all of us, is like, yeah, like, let's cover the bases. And so this, like 10 minutes later, this priest comes in and he's like sweating and his hair's a little wet and he's wearing like a really ill-fitting suit. It's clear like he's put on weight since last time he put on his suit. So he's also like sort of physically uncomfortable in it. And he comes in and he's like, is this your mother? And there's 8 of us in the room, the 4 of us and all of our spouses. I'm like, yes. He says, okay. And so he does this very lovely prayer. And then he says, was that okay? And we say, oh yeah, that was great. Thank you. And he says, whew, I still got it. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I know you're Jews, so I'm glad it was you. I'm glad it was with you guys. I've been on leave, so we can have children in our faith. We can have children. So I'm married, and I just had a kid, and I haven't been at the hospital in a while. And then I got a call. A lot of stuff is happening tonight. They're going to need me. So I came in and, just sort of rushed in, and then your mom died. And so she's the first person I've done this for in a really long time. And, I was nervous, but, yeah, I can still do it. I got it. And we're just like, what the fuck is happening? And I'm like, and I turn and I see my brother is clocking all of this. And I was like, oh, no. This belongs to me. I said this to him. I get this. This is my story. I get to tell this story. You don't get this story. He's like, oh, God. Okay. And the guy's like, all right. So, death certificate, and we're good. We're good. Sorry about your mom.
Walks out.
And we're just like, there's still a dead body in front of us, our mother. And we're just like, so now what do we do?
There's not like a list of instruction. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like all of it is new, right?
Yeah.
Even
but I can still see this priest, like, just like his hair was like matted to his forehead with sweat, like he'd run up the stairs. He was like in a Chris Farley suit.
I was going to say, I'm seeing Chris Farley as the priest giving last rites, but
God.
So, this led to a work of fiction.
Well, it's led to all my work of fiction. It's like the way I'm able to exist on a day-to-day basis is I view the world absurdly and not through anger. Because if I viewed it through anger, I'd be a mess. But in viewing it as an absurd series of events that we're all party to, it allows me to, I think, process my emotions in a healthier way. And it invariably filters its way back into the work itself. And so even just, someone listening to this conversation, when they go read the book, you're going to realize like, oh, Todd's mother was an assisted living facility. Isn't the bad guy's mother an assisted living facility? Like I'm always, stealing from myself. Our family had a house in Capitola. This guy, comes from Pajaro, which is right next door. So all these weird things in my life have allowed me to write sort of crime fiction that has a bit of an absurd bent to it. But I take the violence seriously. There's always a consequence to the violence in my books. No one gets off scot-free from doing something bad.
Well, that's the other thing about this novel is that embedded within it is a kind of critique of true crime culture. It's not it's not like the main stage story, but there's the cousin, I think, Addie, who is Penny's cousin, and she has like a true crime podcast. And then there's also this issue of how Granite Shores has sort of built an economy around the disappearance of Robert Greene and this kind of crime story. And so I want to hear you talk a little bit about that, because clearly you've spent your life, your professional life, thinking about crime and its consequences and the people who commit these crimes and what their lives and like minds and souls are like. And so what do you think about the commodification of crime, especially in the last, like, I'd say 15 years? It's really boomed.
It's huge. I mean, but so I'm a hypocrite. That's the important thing. Like every night when we go to bed, we watch, Dead Girl Missing, like whatever Hulu or Peacock, 52 minutes, they, fall 1975, Kentucky, Janet Turner. And you're like, oh, I'm in, what's going to happen? So I'm just as guilty as anyone else, because I find true crime at the end of the day, like, very calming, because it's chaos righted. And they write chaos at the end of a true crime documentary, and I can go to bed and feel like, if someone breaks in here tonight and slits my throat, someone's going to figure it out. It's going to probably be a Texas Ranger with a giant white hat who for some reason is in California. So I'm as guilty of it as anyone else, but I'm also fascinated by the way we have turned the worst parts of our culture into our culture. True crime is just, you don't need to put true on, it's just crime. It's just bad stuff that has happened to people. And I I think a lot about Savannah, Georgia. Have you ever been to Savannah before?
I sure have, yeah.
Great city, wonderful
Yep.
city. But they have turned that into Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil theme park. Like that entire town has an economy around that book and that movie based on that true murder that happened.
I think there's also like a maybe like a ancillary Forrest Gump economy.
Oh yeah, for the bench. Yeah, totally. So when we were in Savannah a few years ago, we went on the tours, we did all that stuff. We walked around, we'd read the book, we saw the movie. And at some point I was like, what are we doing? Like, I mean, it's great here. I love Savannah. Beautiful town. But, we're walking in the steps of someone's worst days, and like, what does that make me as a person that I want to go stand in places where people died? But I mean, that's also sort of the history of history. We go places where traumatic things have happened. You go to New York and you go to where the Twin Towers were, or you go to Gettysburg or whatever. We are inexorably drawn to tragedy in all its forms. And I don't know if it's something about the human condition where, there's you feel something, of course, where a lot of people have died. There's a weight that exists there, and maybe it's the shared consciousness of the people around you, or you just know that people were here and then they weren't here. But there's always weight at those places. And so I think about all that stuff and how we celebrate it and how we have the podcasts and the documentaries and the books and all this stuff, and why we need it and why we want it, and what happens to a place when its identity is tied to tragedy, and that becomes its economy. I don't have the answers for it, but I'm fascinated and a little sickened by it at once, while knowing also I'm as easily manipulated by it as anybody else.
I'm astonished that you watch this shit before going to bed. Like
every night.
Oh my God. If I watch like a story about a kid being abducted or some woman, it's like a serial killer, I get too rattled by it. It does not do good things for my sleep.
There's a show that we watch. I have no idea what channel it's on. And it's there's 3 versions of it, but you don't know which version it is until you watch that episode. It's either buried in the backyard, buried in snow, or buried in the desert. And the credits tell you what it's going to be, and so like, oh, they're going to find her in someone's backyard. But for me, it's like, well, how are they going to find her in the backyard? I sort of like knowing also, like, oh, well, they're gonna find the body. That's helpful. If one of these, like, we watch those cold case shows all the time, and I need to know that they solve the crime. If it's just like a cold case and there's just horribly sad people at the end being like, I never will see Janelle again. I'm like, well, it's always, I'm sorry, Southerners, I just did a terrible Southern accent, but it's always someone in 40 miles outside of Louisville.
Yeah.
A girl goes missing. And it's, the pain in these people's faces, and I'm getting enjoyment and entertainment from watching their suffering. I feel gross, and I'm also like, it was great. Yeah, I was going to get away with it.
Well, I mean, they're compelling stories. They activate our fear, and like some of our most primal, I think, emotions, right, and empathy, and just like, it's like, I think maybe there's also comfort in seeing these things play out for somebody else because it's not us.
Totally. But I'll tell you something funny. So I was in Nashville a year and a half ago, and I was there with there was a big crime conference there, and I got into an Uber with Mick Herron, who writes the Slow Horses books. It's the TV show that's on Apple. And I think it was Stuart Neville, who's also a crime writer in England, and Bronwyn Ruska, who is the editor-in-chief of Soho Press. So we'd gone to a party together at this thing, and we got an Uber, and we get into the Uber, and I sit down next to the woman driving the Uber, and she looks like a missing person. She looks like the photo you would see, like blonde hair except for the thick black roots, like 2 big earrings, and just like wearing a shirt that's off her shoulder as an Uber driver. And you're like, well, this is an interesting thing. And so I sit down with her, And unprovoked, she has no idea who's in the car with her, that there's 3 crime writers and the editor-in-chief of one of the biggest crime presses in America. And I'm like, hey, how you doing tonight? And she's like, Nashville, it's not what it seems. And I was like, what? And she's like, a lot of people come up missing here. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? She's like, yeah, if you got a predilection for that sort of person, a lot of disposable people end up coming up missing. My best friend, she came up missing 4 years ago. And I'm like, hold on one moment, please. I turned to it and I'm like, I get that title. I get come up missing as my title. You can't have it. You can't have it. Bronwyn, I want a contract. Come up missing belongs to me. And everything else that's about to happen in this conversation belongs to me. And so then she goes on to tell this incredible story of like all the missing of Nashville. And I was like, well, don't you get worried, driving Uber? And she turns to me, and she's driving at this point. She turns to me and she says, well, I take care of my own protection. And I was like, oh, okay. Don't want you to shoot me. And then she said, but also, there's a button you can press and it alerts Uber and they'll get the cops to you. And I was like, okay. She's like, but, something weird did happen to me recently and it really rattled me. And my dad, he didn't want me driving Uber for a bit afterward, but I had to keep doing it because I'm saving up for my my honeymoon. And so I was like, well, where do you want to go on your honeymoon? She's like, oh, we want to go see Alabama play Tennessee. And then we want to go to Dollywood. I was like, this is the greatest day of my entire life. And I said, well, what was the thing that got you rattled? And she said, well, there was a guy I picked up and, I'm a very empathetic person. So I was talking to him and, he was just steady crying the whole time in the drive. And so I said, sir, what's going on with you? And he said, well, the police think I killed my wife. And I said, well, why do they think that? And he said, well, I think it's suicide, but they think I killed her. She's like, well, why do you think it's suicide? And why do they think that you killed her? And he said, well, she was stabbed 47 times.
Jesus.
And I was like, what? And she said, yeah. So I got him to his house and just talked to him for a real long time. And I kept my hand, on my safety. And, come to find he did end up getting arrested for that. I was like, am I being filmed right now?
I mean, this begs the question: is there a Southern noir coming from Tod Goldberg?
100% Southern noir. God, yeah. Writers like Ace Atkins or Eli Craner, they're doing some really cool stuff. Yeah, Sean, he's doing fantastic stuff. Or of course, Ozark Noir, Daniel Woodrell's stuff. The great thing about noir is I think of it often, crime noir versus film noir, of course, as sort of like the gangster rap and crime noir come from LA, but it has permeated into every culture and every place in the country because no place is good. LA's got sunshine noir, but there's darkness everywhere.
Okay, yeah, this is where I wanted to wrap things up, is that I wanted to ask you in kind of a sidebar way about the age that we're living in, which, on a political level feels just rife with obscene, wide open criminality, unfettered criminality. And it can seem to me anyway, oh my God, things are worse. The criminality of powerful people has never been more on display and unchecked.
That's
and
true.
I am wondering how you would, as a crime writer, an expert crime writer, an observer of criminal behavior, how do you assess Trump and his crew as criminals?
They're terrible gangsters. They're the worst gangsters because they can't stop talking about the things that they're doing. And like all organized crime families, it's not the head of the family that's going to go to prison. It's everybody else. He's got immunity. Everybody else doesn't. And unless he prematurely pardons every single person that has worked in his administration, the check is going to come due. the check is going to come due. Now, whether or not anything actually happens, see Garland, Merrick, from that check coming due, I don't know. But they're also sort of a common crime family in that they can't keep secrets. They all backbite. They all backstab. They all want to be the big boss. And they only can rule by fear for as long as the person who seems to be the most fearful doesn't drift into satire. And that's where we are now, is that he's a buffoon. And the fear that you might have had for him 8 years ago, you can see him degrading like a banana peel in front of you. And so what seemed like a fearful thing, and there's reason to be scared, the policies are terrible. And if you have any friends that aren't straight up Aryans, they're suffering in some real or existential way. I mean, he'd like to take it back to the Jim Crow South. I mean, he's trying. But he's also slid into such profound buffoonery that people that want to be powerful later on aren't scared to take shots at him. So I find that sort of compelling as a person who has studied criminal organizations for most of his life. Like, how do these things rise and how do these things fall? And in the case of how do they rise, it's always an opportunist. It's always someone who knows how to exploit the system. And he has absolutely exploited the system. He has managed to, bring out the worst in people and then also get billionaires to support it. But I am confident that this time will end, and you're seeing it, that people's true nature, I think, is to be good. And you can't stop that. Here's the other thing, that on a personal level, my uncle wrote the Civil Rights Act of 1964. He was working as the chief of staff for Senator Magnuson, and he was the guy that wrote the 1964 Civil Rights Act. There's this amazing biography where they talk about my uncle in it, and says that Stan Baer clerked a social revolution. And he's dead now. He's been dead since 2019. He was alive when Trump first got elected. And for the rest of his career, he advised every president we had, Democrat or Republican. He was a big Democrat, but he advised every single Republican on trade and on shipping and on civil rights. Like the Obamas stayed in his house. The Clintons stay in his house in Washington State. And when Trump got elected, I called him and I was like, what do we do? What do we do? And he said, we have got to teach this elephant that you can't shit in the house. He's like, he's going to shit in the house, but eventually the people that live in the house are going to want to get him and his shit out. And I think we are in the portion of our history where we're pretty tired of the elephant shitting in the house. And you're seeing that reflected in people's responses.
Okay. So just to keep things in the world of fiction, we're in the third act of the book, back half of the book.
Yeah, we're in the third act. Yeah. We're at the point at which you start to see us clawing back, that it all seemed like we're never going to get out of this mess. When you see someone as lunatic as Marjorie Taylor Greene saying I don't agree with this guy. When you lose a QAnon supporter, he's gone too far. I don't agree with this. People, I think, are responding to that. You and I talked about this 10 years ago when he first got elected. One of my new books was out, and you and I were talking about it then. And I did a pretty good job of predicting the arc of what was going to happen then, which was, he's going to serve his full 4 terms, or his full 4 years. He'll probably get impeached, but he won't leave the presidency. And, it'll be horrible. I could not have predicted that there'd be a pandemic and Joe Biden would win and Joe Biden would turn 275 years old while he was in office.
Right.
I couldn't have predicted that. And so I think we're in the position of oh man, we're in Jaws 3. Oh, Jaws 2 was pretty good, but Jaws 3, wasn't that 3D? They did that in 3D, I think. Michael Caine was in Jaws 3. So we're in the Michael Caine 3D sequel of this. We're oh God, This is the absurdity, the mind-numbing cruelty, absurdity, and the giant human-eating animal floating outside of our house. That's bad. It's bad, but we're gonna spear it.
Last thing. I think you talked about it earlier. There's the Salton Sea book, right? It's about the 1960s organized crime around the Salton Sea. That's what's coming next?
That's what I'm going to write next, yeah.
Novel.
Yeah. Well, I'm working on a couple sequel projects right now, or secret projects, that, next year at this time you'll know more about.
All right. Well, it's a cliffhanger then.
I'll tell you when we're not recording, and then you can spill it to everybody.
Okay. Well, it's great to talk with you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Always so fun to do this. And hey, folks, if you're listening to this, I also have a teaching module in the classes that Brad's got. And I have to tell you, I'm amazing in that.
He's one of DeepDive's finest.
I think when I die eventually, I will be most known for the deep dive.
I'm gonna, if I ever visit your tombstone, I would expect to see some mention of it engraved.
I would love my tombstone to have a full bibliography on it. I wonder if I talked about that. I want the tie-in novels. I want like the short stories for like the college magazines. Like, oh, he was in the Northridge Review in '92. I didn't know that. To go to the microfiche and see what he was writing about.
Well, always fun. And we'll talk again. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you, sir. It's a good time.
All right, there we have it. That was Tod Goldberg talking with me about his latest novel. It is called Only Way Out, available right now from Thomas and Mercer. You can find Tod Goldberg on the internet at todgoldberg.com. Track him down on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. Once again, the book is called Only Way Out. It's a work of crime fiction, Oregon noir, Pacific Northwest noir. It's great. It's a page-turner. Check it out. Only Way Out. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow me on Instagram and Bluesky. Sign up for my newsletter over at bradlisti.substack.com. If you love this show, if you listen regularly, support the show over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. If you want to join the book club, the Other People Book Club, and get a new book delivered to your door every 30 days, you can do that at otherppl.com. You can also get an Other People t-shirt while you're there. And if you want to check out DeepDive, get a DeepDive course, cash in on Cyber Monday and Cyber Tuesday. It's a 2-day sale, December 1st and 2nd. Enter the code CYBER2025 at checkout and save 50%. Send a course as a gift. You can do all of that at www.deepdive.audio. And finally, if you have 2 minutes and you want to do me a favor, please rate and review this podcast wherever you listen. It helps the show find new listeners. All right, that's it. I hope you guys had a good time. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I'll be back on Tuesday, I think, with a new episode, another conversation with another author. But I'm not going to tell you who it is, because I just can't say yet. It's not done yet. So you'll just have to wait and see. All right? Coming up on Tuesday. Stay tuned.